More breaking news this morning. The Supreme Court rejecting a bid to hear Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal. Maxwell argues she was unjustly prosecuted for her role helping Jeffrey Epstein recruit and groom girls as young as 14. In 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years behind bars for sex trafficking. And joining us now is Eric Fudali, who represents several Epstein accusers. Also with us, former U.S. Attorney and MSNBC legal analyst Barbara McQuade. Eric, first, your reaction to this big development.
Well, it's fantastic news. I mean, this is absolutely the right decision. What Ms. Maxwell's team tried to do is they tried really to turn one of the great travesties of injustice when it comes to child sex trafficking, the non-prosecution agreement by Alex Acosta, to allow Jeffrey Epstein to continue to abuse for another decade. They tried to use that to say, now you also can't prosecute Ms. Maxwell because technically she would have been included as a co-conspirator, and that would apply to the entire United States, even though it very clearly only applied to Florida. So that's what she tried to do. And thankfully, the Supreme Court did not buy it, just like every court did not buy it. It was a real Hail Mary argument. And on behalf of the victims, we're very pleased. I hope this is the last we hear of Ghislaine Maxwell, unless, of course, the news is that she's being transferred back to a more maximum security prison.
Have you heard it all from any of your clients at this point in reaction to this?
Certainly, yeah. They're relieved. Every time they have to hear Ms. Maxwell's name, remember, she was given this platform by the DOJ to just deny and tell her side of the story, which was nonsense. She got to be moved to this minimum security resort. We're really sick of this Ghislaine Maxwell special treatment. We're really sick of her getting a platform, and we're really sick of her being in the news. She doesn't deserve to be in the news. She deserves to be behind bars where child sex traffickers belong.
So, Barb, in a statement, here's what Maxwell's attorney says. This fight isn't over. Serious legal and factual issues remain, and we will continue to pursue every avenue available to ensure that justice is done. He doesn't elaborate on what he means by this fight isn't over. What could he mean? Could Maxwell take this challenge further in some way?
Yes, one of the things that a defendant has available to them, even after they have exhausted all of their rights to appeal, is to file a habeas corpus petition alleging that their confinement is in violation of the Constitution in some way. And so if you could say that someone's constitutional rights were deprived at some stage of the case, in this instance, perhaps this argument that we've just been discussing about the plea agreement that Alex Acosta signed. I don't think that there is any merit to any of them based on what we have seen. I agree that this last gasp legal challenge before the Supreme Court was the equivalent of a legal Hail Mary. But nonetheless, there is this, it's a civil process, a habeas process that could seek collateral relief from courts if there is a constitutional violation that occurred in the process of her prosecution.
Eric, are you prepared if Maxwell's team tries to take that approach?
Yeah, I'm prepared. I've been prepared for everything that comes out of this Epstein sort of debacle, you could call it, for the last few decades. There's almost zero chance that habeas corpus would work for Ms. Maxwell. She's going to be behind bars. She's going to be in prison where she belongs.
Unless she gets pardoned.
Unless she gets pardoned. And, I couldn't even think of the words to describe the devastation that would be to victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ms. Maxwell if that was the case. But right now, I think we're all really pleased and hope this is the last we hear of Ms. Maxwell for a good time.
Barb, today is the first day of the new Supreme Court term, and the justices already are looking at a docket stacked with challenges to President Trump's policies and use of executive powers. Which cases are you watching most closely?
Well, I think most closely I will be watching the new emergency petitions that come from this administration. Already the court has taken more than 24 emergency petitions on the so-called shadow docket, and I imagine we'll see even more. But already docketed, I think the cases relating to presidential power are the most important and will have the longest implications in our country. One about President Trump's power to assess tariffs, that will be heard in November, and then also his ability to fire the heads of independent agencies. There's cases involving the FTC, the NLRB, and the Federal Reserve. Congress put checks and balances in there to require staggered terms, longer lengths, bipartisanship, and for-cause provisions. And President Trump has taken the position that as the executive, he has all of the executive power and gets to fire people as he pleases. So I think those are going to be some really monumental cases that come down.
So much for us to cover. Thank you, Barbara McQuade, Eric Fudali. Great to have you both with us.